Good afternoon. I acknowledge we are speaking on Treaty 6 territory, and I also acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. About an hour ago, we got our first look at Bill 11, the Continuing Care Act. We will examine this bill very closely, but today we can offer some early responses. It amends many pieces of legislation, and I will be looking into the consequential impact of these technical amendments. I was hoping for significant transformational change to the continuing care system, especially given the tragic failures we have seen over the past 2 years. But this bill doesn't contain anything like that. While there are a handful of reasonable housekeeping items in here, Albertans living in continuing care and their families will get no relief from this bill. It's yet another reason why Albertans can't trust the UCP. According to the National Institute of Aging, over 1,605 deaths due to COVID-19 occurred in continuing care. Many of these were preventable. Every single one of these lives lost is a tragedy. And we should respond by significantly reforming the care system and not repeating the same mistakes that were made during the deadliest waves of the pandemic. Many of the problems in care were present before the pandemic, but they became magnified during it. Throughout the worst of this pandemic, Albertans reached out to me concerned that their loved ones were not getting the care they needed. Their loved ones were being left for extended periods of time in their own waste and not being fed in a timely manner. These are issues that must be addressed. The facility-based continuing care review completed in April of last year made important recommendations, including significantly increasing the amount of home care provided in the province, improving working conditions for continuing care staff, and increasing the amount of full-time compared to part-time staff in the care system. At the beginning of the pandemic, there were calls for workforce strategies to address shortages of staff in the continuing care system. These calls were ignored by the UCP. During the pandemic, I heard many concerns about the outcomes at privately operated continuing care homes and that pandemic-related subsidies were going to expanding dividends rather than improving care. When we brought these concerns forward, the UCP did not respond. And when Albertans wanted to sue operators for what they believed was gross negligence in how their loved ones were treated, the UCP took their right to seek justice away. There are systemic and drastic issues the government needs to address in continuing care, and I see none of those substantial steps being taken today. I'm now happy to take your questions.
All right, we will go over to the phones for questions. If you have a question, please use *9 or the raise hand function. All right, caller, your line should be open.
Hey, it's Janet French from the CBC. Lori, can you tell us what sort of substantive measures you did want to see, particularly in legislation? Like, it sounds like some of the things you're asking for might be more funding related.
Well, one of the things that we know is a significant issue in continuing care is just the precarious workforce and the issue of full-time and part-time staff, adequate staffing levels, so the staffing ratio. So certainly I think that is something I heard over repeatedly regarding concerns in continuing care, because the staff just were insufficient to support people, especially with the increased demands on their time when so many residents had COVID. So I would say staffing levels and the type of staff are especially important.
Do you have a follow-up, Janet?
Yeah, Lori, do you see any merits in this, at least creating a sense of consistency among this, around the system, creating a sense that there will be standards that will be established that would apply to any of these types of services, regardless of what type of service it is?
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Yes, absolutely. I mean, even the amalgamation of several pieces of legislation into one bill, I think, is important. But it is more housekeeping, really, as opposed to transformational, which I think, for example, the staffing shifts, I think, that are most important. But no, it's important, but it's just all unknown still. Like, it's still, this bill really doesn't tell us hardly anything. And, certainly they talk about, standards and regulations, but that won't be available until the spring of 2023. So, it's all kind of like, who knows what's going to happen. So, but certainly, it is good to bring legislation together, and it's good to have standards. I don't have any qualms about those things, but over 1,600 people died in continuing care, and a lot of these were preventable deaths. And so, transformational change would have really, I think, looked very clearly at staffing levels, which this document doesn't.
All right, we will make another call for questions. If anyone on the phones want to use the *9 function, and anyone on Zoom to raise hand. And seeing no more questions, I will conclude our press conference for today. Thank you, everyone.
Tens of thousands of Albertans have already provided their idea for how we can build Alberta's future. You can too by going to albertasfuture.ca.